2 out of the last 3 years, we had an unprecedented theft of the people's money stolen through the Minnesota Department of Education. This state government supervised the theft of $250 million. And the responsibility was with the Minnesota Department of Education. Now, Mr. President, that commissioner is no longer there at the department. And I have queried in committee a variety of people in position to ask them about what is being done in our state government to find out who is responsible for allowing this to happen within our government. And members, Mr. President, I have yet to find one person in the Walz administration to step forward and take responsibility, be accountable, or even to find a way to prevent that from happening in the future. So if Senator Swedzinski would yield, I'd appreciate it, Mr. President.
Senator Swedzinski will yield. Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, Senator Swedzinski, as you know, there were 51, I think, indictments so far and at least 6 convictions in the broad scandal of the theft of $250 million of the people's money through the Department of Education. Now, I haven't met Commissioner Jett, but certainly you have, and you spoke very highly of him. Can you point to us specific things that this commissioner has done or said that are persuasive to you that he is going to actually take this seriously and clean up the failures within the Minnesota Department of Education that erupted out of and still exists there today due to the Feeding Our Future fraud?
Senator Swedzinski.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Senator Drazkowski. First of all, I'd like to say I don't think to say that those things are still there today is an accurate assessment, and so we may have to disagree on that. The other thing is you're pointing up something that happened in the past, and the Department of Education, I think if you read the reports that came out, you'll find out that they did everything by the book, and the people that committed the fraud, the 51 people I think you mentioned, I hope they suffer the full extent of the law. And so, but to answer your overriding question, I think William Jett, Commissioner of Education William Jett, is going to rise to the occasion, and I think a year or 2 from now, you're going to be humbly grateful for the leadership he's going to provide. Thank you for that question, Senator.
Senator Swedzinski. Senator Swedzinski.
Drazkowski, I've got it.
Drazkowski,
I've got it, Mr. President. Thank you.
I'm mixing up those skis there.
It's still winter, Mr. President. So thank you. Senator Swedzinski, the department did not do everything they were supposed to do. As a matter of fact, we have 2 laws in the state of Minnesota, our laws that direct any department that suspects fraud to report it to the Office of the Legislative Auditor. Specifically, last year I sent a letter to the Office of the Legislative Auditor and asked her, has the Department of Education contacted you about this? Can you show us the copy of the contact that they made to you, Auditor, to fulfill this? Well, I was pointing to one law at that point, Senator, and there is another one that also asks, requires the same thing. And the response from the legislative auditor was, we have never been contacted by the Minnesota Department of Education about Feeding Our Future. And as a matter of fact, she went on to elaborate, the first time that the Office of the Legislative Auditor heard about the fraud around Feeding Our Future was when she read about it in the newspaper. This is an abject failure of our government to do what we are telling it to do in statute that has been developed by legislatures and governors for decades into history. the culpability of the Department of Education in this definitely exists. They did not do what we told them to do in law. So if Senator Swedzinski would yield again, Mr. President.
Senator Swedzinski, will you yield? He will yield. Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. President. So Senator Swedzinski, again, my question is there anything specific that Commissioner Jett has said to you that persuades you to believe that he is taking Feeding Our Future and the fraud that happened in the department that he is taking the helm of? Is there anything specific he has said to you to persuade you that he's going to take it serious and commit to strong action to make sure that things are cleaned up and that the department actually begins to follow our laws?
Senator Swedzinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Drazkowski, I hope that you take the opportunity to come to my office. I don't have a copy of the governor's bill in front of me, but if you swing by today or next week or at your leisure, I'll show you the specific provision in the governor's bill that addresses many of your concerns that the governor and the next commissioner will do to avoid what happened from ever happening again. And I just want to remind our senators that this was we should never forget what's happened in the past, and this is coming from a history teacher, obviously, but I think the commissioner is going to like I said, Senator, in a year or two from now, you're going to be coming and saying he's doing a fine job. So thank you, Senator. Swing by my office.
Senator Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, Senator Swedzinski, thank you. I'll come by. I'm sure we'll talk. But what the governor is proposing is to spend more taxpayer money and hire more people. That's what he's proposing to do. What should have happened is the people there should have followed the law. We've got thousands of people in the Minnesota Department of Education, I assume. I don't have the number in recall, members, but these agencies need to be accountable to the people of Minnesota and the laws that they've created. And this department is in default, huge default. And I want to be assured, Mr. President, that this commissioner takes this seriously moving forward. And if there hasn't been a public statement from this commissioner about how serious that is and what actions he's going to take at this point in the process, I find that very concerning. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator